Welcome, everyone, to Chimney Rock. My name is Elizabeth Vianna. I'm the winemaker and general manager here at Chimney Rock. We are we're together tonight for the first Symphony of Senses, an idea that was born out of my friendship with an amazing musician, Sarah Sant'Ambrogio. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Elizabeth.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Sarah. She is a child prodigy, amazing cellist, Grammy winning, has recorded with many, many symphonies around the world. She is extraordinary. And I'm not going to say a whole lot more about her because you'll discover her through her music. But let me tell you a little bit about our concept tonight. So I met Sarah many, many years ago. We've known each other now for almost 20 years. And we have always been sort of fascinated and obsessed by the idea of pairing wine and music. We think that wine and music have texture, they have so much in common. And it's really extraordinary when you start to think aesthetically about how similar they are. They're mathematical, they're artistic, I mean, I could just go on. So my idea was I would send 3 wines to Sarah, and she, who is so incredibly aesthetically perceptive, would taste these wines and come up with a piece of music that would capture the essence of the wine. So I'll introduce the first wine, and then we're going to have Sarah tell us about the piece of music that she picked and why she selected that piece of music. So the first wine this evening is our 2016 Elevage Blanc. Our Elevage Blanc is a white Bordeaux style blend. It's a blend of Sauvignon Blanc and Sauvignon Gris, 79% Sauvignon Blanc, 20% Sauvignon Gris. And white Bordeaux's are white wines that are actually meant to age. So they're wines that can age 5, 10, 15 years. They have a lot of depth and lots of layers. They're barrel fermented, a lot of richness, a lot to say. And I think this is a very thought provoking wine. And I knew that this would inspire Sarah. So, Sarah, tell us about the piece of music you selected for this wine and why.
Well, it was interesting because when we first collaborated together musically and winely, you also released an Elevage Blanc with my first solo box CD. And it was a very different wine than the one that you just sent me in for different reasons. Both are superb. I mean, they're just incredible. But when I tasted this Elevage Blanc, the first thing I felt was this incredible power. It just was so strong in the mouth, in the front of the mouth. And then there was this just a tiny hint of sweetness. And then I felt there was like a femininity about it, but not a femininity that was soft, a femininity that was like goddess strength. And um, and it was this layering that you did with the different notes that really became, the more that I spent that evening tasting it and thinking about it and drinking it and smelling it and savoring it, the more that this piece of music by Jules Massenet, Meditation from Thais, started just to come forward and say, I need to be heard with this wine. Because the story of Thais, this excerpt, this piece is probably the most famous piece that Jules Massenet ever wrote. And it comes from an interlude in a ballet named Thais. Thais was this unbelievably beautiful, spirited, incredibly smart courtesan. And she was living a life of wildness and freedom, but feels that there's something missing. And this moment where the meditation happens is when she walks through a garden, and a priest and her start talking about the richness of life and how everything that in life you have the gratitude and the beauty in life, and how you reach up and you connect to a greater source, and it creates a beauty throughout your world. And so that's the moment of the ballet where it turns and everything is perfect. And so to me, like this white Bordeaux, there's a femininity and there's a softness to it, but there's a power that's just like really hits you, it's really full bodied and full mouthed. And it just reminded me of this piece, which I just love, and I think it's one of the most beautiful pieces ever written, and so I was so happy to be able to play it for you guys.
Well, I have to share with our public that I didn't know in advance until we were together tonight. And by the way, Sarah is in New York and I'm in Napa Valley. And I didn't
Welcome to
know
Zoom.
until via Zoom, that's right. And I didn't know until tonight what the pieces were. I got to listen right before we had this conversation. And I was so moved by this first selection. I knew this piece. I didn't identify it, but I knew it. I was like, oh, I know this, I know this, I know this. But
Right.
it was so rich and so layered. And I just felt like
Yes, like
it
this
had,
wine,
yeah,
right? It
it
just feels
really
so layered. Yeah, yeah.
totally. I mean, you just got it as I knew you would. So first of all, I'm thinking this is not going to be the last Symphony of Senses. We'll be doing more of these because this is so much fun.
It is so
But
much
I
fun,
just
right?
feel like this is extraordinary, Sarah. And I also want to share with our guests today about how I met you, because I think that's kind of a fun part of this story. So in 2006, a really good friend of ours, a good mutual friend of ours, um, uh, let us know that we should meet. Sarah was going to come to perform with the San Francisco Symphony. And so I went and saw Sarah perform, and I was just blown away. Her power on the cello, she dances with the instrument. It is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Thank
And then
you.
I got to have dinner with her. I got to have dinner with her after. So we met for dinner. We didn't know each other.
Blind date.
Yes, exactly. And we had, I don't know, a 3, 4 hour dinner.
Yeah.
And what we found was that we were very kindred spirits and we had this connection both to music and to wine. And immediately we drifted to the topic of the parallels between the two.
Yeah.
And so we've done a couple of partnerships since then. But I'm really thrilled about tonight. And I hope that you really, really enjoy all of this creativity that abounds in this interesting time
Yeah.
in our lives, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is a time I feel like that we have to really hold close to those beautiful things in life that are rare and that really truly are joyous and makes your body feel alive because there's you know we need that. We need that so much, And I know for me, I had the coronavirus pretty seriously, and then I ended up having emergency surgery because of blood clots from the coronavirus. And to me, the one thing that just never stopped happening while I was ill was I kept hearing the music in my head. And I kept thinking, I can't wait till I can get back to the cello and make music again.
Yeah, music and
Yeah.
wine are just those things, right? I
Yes,
mean, they
music
make
and
us stop.
wine. It's like love. You can never have too much.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, shall we talk about wine number two and piece number two? So our
Yes.
second wine
So,
is our 2018 Stag's Leap District Cabernet. So
yeah.
this is a blend that's made from all of the blocks here at Chimney Rock. We've got about 105 acres of vineyards. I take all of it together and blend it into a singular wine that's really meant to capture time and place, a particular vintage. So a little bit about 2018, it was a very cool year. The fruit to me in this wine is very dark and brooding, very layered, very textured. This wine is actually a blend. It's 75% Cabernet. It's got about 23% Merlot, 1% Cab Franc, 1% Petit Verdot. So
Oh,
very
wow.
complex. It's got 4 varieties. And let's see what Sarah thought about this wine and what drove her to pick our next piece. Tell me about the piece you chose, Sarah.
Well, so I have to tell you, when I tasted this wine, I just, the first word that came to me was elegance, like literally romantic elegance. It's just so well balanced, Elizabeth. It's just so well balanced. It's just you really can taste the different blends in there, and it's just so perfectly crafted. And so this one took a little longer because I was trying to find just the perfect piece that had that elegance and that regality, but also had a darkness to it, and a sort of a dark, a sort of more passionate thing in there, but not a passion that it was too wild or spicy. It had to be like a passion that was just like perfectly positioned. And so suddenly it occurred to me, oh, you know, Chopin is perfect for this. And a Chopin nocturne is perfect for this wine because of a couple of reasons. First of all, I think that all of Chopin is just so extraordinarily A, romantic, and B, the perfection of elegance. I mean, he is so elegant. Everything about his music is so elegant, but it's also shockingly romantic. But he creates romance in a way that is almost different than any other composer. Generally, a composer will create more passion by getting louder, or digging in more. But Chopin, there's an interesting quote from Robert Schumann, the great German composer, that he wrote to a friend of his, saying, I just heard the most extraordinary pianist and composer in Paris at a salon. He had gone to hear Chopin, and he said he had the most exquisite triple pianissimos. Like, so literally, he had the most beautiful, softest sound you'd ever heard on a piano. That Chopin, he was never more than 100 pounds. He was 5'6". He was always very frail and of ill health. But so he created passion by adding notes, but never being rough. And that's what this wine seems so well balanced, is just so elegant and has this smoothness to it, this velvety texture to the palate that to me is embodied by Chopin. There's never anything rough about Chopin. Everything is just so exquisite. It's like when you play a piece of music of Chopin, it's like he took his heart and he offers it to you and says, could you please take care of this?
it literally moved me to tears when you started to play this.
Oh, thank you.
Because I played the piano as a child, and this was the first nocturne of Chopin's that I ever learned.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it really confirmed to me that our connection is like
right.
is
I know.
unearthly. Like you and I were
Exactly.
meant to meet, and we were meant to share these like amazing moments of creativity. Like it really like I thought it was perfect because I also think of a nocturne as a piece dedicated to the night.
The evening, yes, exactly.
It's dark.
It's darker, like this wine is darker. I know, exactly. So, yeah, it really it and so really it was choosing. So interesting that you say that that was your first piece, your first Chopin, because I honed in on Chopin almost immediately. Literally in the first glass that I had, I honed in on Chopin, but I was choosing between three pieces. And at first I was leaning toward a different one of his etudes. And then something just kept pulling me over. The next day I had another glass and it kept pulling me to the nocturne. So isn't that interesting?
It was perfection. I'm gonna go home tonight and I'm gonna taste each of these wines again and listen to the music.
Oh, that's so. I mean, that's what wine and music together. That's what they're meant to do. It's the symphony of senses.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the third wine. I selected one of my favorite single vineyard Cabernets on this property. It is Ganymede Vineyard. So Ganymede was a mortal kidnapped by Zeus to pour wine for the gods on Mount Olympus. And here at Chimney Rock, there's actually a frieze of Ganymede on the side of one of our buildings.
Wow, I
And
didn't know that.
yes, and so his
Cool.
spirit lives here. And so the block that we named after him are some of the oldest wines on the property. They're about 30 years old. And Sarah, you should see these vines. They're like massive and gnarly and beautiful, and they just produce the most amazing fruit year
Oh, so
after
cool.
year. So
Oh.
this is a single vineyard Cabernet, so it's 100% Cabernet, nothing else blended in. But I feel like this vineyard has a lot to say. It has age, it has wisdom,
Yeah,
and I thought that it would be very inspiring, Sarah.
it was. And I have to tell you, the first, literally before I took the first sip, I could smell it as I was coming toward my mouth. And I thought to myself, okay, don't decide. But I already had the piece in my head. And then I took a sip and I went, Mendelssohn Song Without Words. Boom. Like it was immediate, the first sip. And
Wow.
then I kept tasting it. And it just kept reinforcing it. It just, to me, this piece is Mendelssohn's Song Without Words. First of all, just to give you a little background on this piece, this is a piece that he wrote on his deathbed. He died at a very young age. Felix Mendelssohn was, if you talk about child prodigies, literally Nietzsche, who heard him when he was like 14, said he makes Mozart look like a schlep. He didn't say schlep, he said something else. But he was such an extraordinary, he was like something from the gods, you know? So I remember years ago I was touring playing the Mendelssohn octet. So it was a piece for basically 2 string quartets, which is considered one of the greatest masterpieces of the chamber music repertoire. And I was performing it in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress. And in the Library of Congress, they happened to have the manuscript of that piece. Felix Mendelssohn wrote that piece when he was 16. And I looked at that manuscript, and it's as if he's taking dictation. There is no hesitation, no smudges, nothing. He had it fully formed in his brain and just wrote it down. it's one of the greatest masterpieces ever written. And he was 16 years old. And there's stuff he wrote at 12, at 7. I mean, the guy was just a prodigy. Thank God, because he died at a very young age. And as so many of the composers did. So we have this huge wealth of material. But so he wrote this on his deathbed, literally at the height of his powers of distilling emotion and beauty and heartache into this one piece. So what I feel about the way I felt connected to this piece is that, and to the piece to the wine, is that when you first taste the wine, right, there's a beautiful flavor right off the bat. And then in the back of the mouth, you start to taste these like sort of spiciness, right? And it starts to get richer in the back of your mouth. And so with the piece of music, it starts off and it's so beautiful. And you think, I know where this piece is going. And then all of a sudden it becomes so much richer and so much more emotional and passionate. And then you're like, oh, okay, so this is where it is. And so what I noticed is that the aftertaste then gets smoother and more it gets smoother and at the end of the medicine, he pulls back. And it's just like you're ascending to heaven at the very end.
You got it perfectly. I mean, I literally think of this wine as sort of, it has this polished, very velvety
Yes.
ending. It's
Yeah.
just, it's finesse, but it also has a lot of layers. I mean, aromatically here,
Yeah.
you have black fruit, you have floral.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have the floral, which is so unusual with the black fruit. Like it's really such a beautiful mixture of smells and flavors.
Yeah, I mean, it just smells like older vines.
Yes, it really does.
And
Yeah,
obviously, like Mendelssohn on his
exactly.
deathbed,
I
which is
know, right?
that's a funny parallel, right?
Exactly, exactly. It just seemed like really it was astonishing. The first sip, I was like, Mendelssohn song without words. Boom, done. Like I that was like it just was so powerful, the connection that happened to me. And I do feel like you know, it's interesting that it's from Ganymede Vineyard though, because there is something. I know this sounds a little queer, but it's a little. There's something really almost heavenly about how long the aftertaste happens. I feel like after I take a sip and then I take a breath in, I feel like I'm just like kind of floating up. It's such a beautiful after on the palate. I love it. Yeah. And I feel the same way with the metal set. I mean, that piece breaks my heart. It just, but at the same time, it's a,
So funny to think about all of these things that wine and music have in common.
yeah,
Wines can be loud, they can be piano.
yeah,
And I might need your help in helping me define some of these terms, but
yeah.
I think wines can be legato, right? Which
They
means
can,
that
yes, and the
they're
smooth legato, they can be staccato, which is like,
staccato, which is like
yes,
hard and fast.
yes. Yeah, and you can be sforza, which is forceful, or it can be pianissimo, very soft, or but they're very similar, and I actually think, frankly, you could use the same terminology for music as you use for wine. You know,
I have to tell you, I often, when I'm blending and thinking about individual lots, I actually do refer back to my time
pianist.
as a young piano player. And I think
Yes.
about composers. And that was before even I met you. But then I met you and I was like, oh, there's a reason for this. It is
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm interested, Elizabeth. So music for sure is extremely mathematical. Um, and in what way is winemaking mathematical? Because that's fascinating to me.
Well, it's mathematical in a chemistry way, right? These are
Right, of course.
molecules and compounds that come together. And all the mathematics behind chemistry that
Right, of
come
course.
together
I didn't even
to
think
to
about that.
put something that can't be. This is okay. So this is one of the things that I think is amazing between wine and music.
Mhm.
They are about science, but science alone does not make it great, right? It's the
Exactly.
je ne sais quoi, the art component is intangible. Uh,
Exactly.
and
I
I think
always,
that's a
yeah.
commonality.
Yeah, I always say when people say, what does it take to be a great classical musician? I say it takes the eye hand coordination of Roger Federer, takes the speed of Usain Bolt, it takes the mathematical skills of Einstein, and then it takes the poetry of Emily Dickinson, and then it takes the charisma of Meryl Streep, all simultaneously. Like you have to do it all at the exact same moment, And but it's very mathematical. But if you only have the mathematics, you have nothing to say.
You
Yeah.
could make wine by formula equally, but
Right.
that wouldn't a great wine make. So I would say that what it takes to make a great classical musician is what it takes to make a great winemaker. I'm gonna have to write down that quote you just said. That was
Yeah, yeah,
brilliant.
but I totally agree with you. I mean, that's why I love your wine so much, Elizabeth, because there is always great structure, great balance, but then there's that magic that only you, Elizabeth Vianna, do. And I recognize that because that is who I am as an artist as well. I do lots of things that lots of other artists do, but in the end, there is some magic that I create that no one else can. And it's unmistakably me. And I can drink 10 different wines and go, that's a Chimney Rock wine. Elizabeth Vianna made that wine because I recognize your soul in that wine. And there's a magic that you do in music and you do in winemaking, in art, that can't be quantified, you know? It's just
Right back at you,
yeah.
right back at you. Well, listen, with spirited words, not only are you a great musician, but I love to listen to you speak because
Oh, thank you.
you're so poetic.
Oh, thank you.
I want to
Thank you.
raise a glass to music and wine and,
Absolutely.
and to friendship
And to
because
friendship.
great things are born of that. So with that,
Absolutely.
I think we come to a close on I'm going to say our first symphony of the century.
I hope it's our first too. Yeah, I hope it's our first too, because I think that we can really go someplace with this. Plus,
I do too.
I have to say, I really appreciate you sending me these wines because I've enjoyed them. They're delicious. Cheers to you.
Cheers to all of our guests who have joined us tonight. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. We hope we've inspired you, and we hope that you'll love music and wine both a little bit more.
Cheers and good night.